The African Continental Free Trade Area has officially been in its operational phase since this weekend. It was one of the strong resolutions of the 12th Extraordinary Summit of the African Union in Niamey, Niger. Outgoing Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras on Monday handed over power to his successor, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, who swept to a landslide victory in Sunday's general elections. The round of 16 of the African Cup of Nations will have been fateful for some of the so-called major countries of continental football. Morocco, Egypt, Cameroon have been knocked out. That's all for our top stories today. Stay tuned for more details in this newscast. African leaders on Sunday officially launched the operational phase of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement in Niamey, capital of Niger. The launch occurred at the 12th Extraordinary Summit of the African Union's heads of state and government. The free trade area plays a big role in working out of the 84,000-kilometer boundaries that we inherited from our colonial past, which means it ensures the full African integration instead of eliminating the boundaries, noted Mahamadou Issoufou, the president of Niger. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi said, "We are now walking on the right track towards a bright future." The launch of the free trade area opens a new window for development and progress instead of economic stagnation and conflicts. On Sunday, Africa's largest economy, Nigeria and Benin, joined the list of signatories of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement signed on March 21st last year in Kigali, Rwanda. Eritrea is the only member of the African Union that has not yet signed the historic agreement. It came into force on May 30th after the deposit of the required minimum 22 instruments of ratification by AU member states of the AU Commission. The pact calls for a single continental market for goods and services with free movement of business, persons, and investment, paving the way for faster establishment of customs union. Once fully operational, the free trade agreement is projected to boost the level of intra-Africa trade by more than 52% by the year 2022, according to the UN Economic Commission for Africa. Born 39 years ago in a small town in central Malawi, Lazarus Shingwandali decided to use his early age prominence to defend his own targets of prejudice and violence. His music is based on rhythmic, energetic melodies with a mix of rock and country music that distinguishes him from all his street neighbors. The defenders of the Albinos rejoice to be able to count the artist among their few supporters. In a very traditional Malawi, they are hunted down, killed and amputated, then used for rituals that are supposed to bring wealth and good luck. According to Amnesty International, at least 18 albinos have been killed and 5 kidnapped since November 2014. Heavy monsoon rains in Bangladesh flooded a Cox's Bazar camp, home to more than 900,000 Rohingyas refugees. They also destroyed some 273 shelters and injured 11 people. The huge refugee camp has for 5 days been hit by continuous rains, and it is not over yet. More heavy rains are expected throughout next week.
So UNICEF, along with its implementing partners, have already started estimating the damages in all 34 camps, and it has already started establishing the communication mechanisms within the wider humanitarian community to directly respond to the incidents of the flooding and the landslides in the refugee camps.
Refugee volunteers trained by United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees and its partners have worked hard to help families in need. In some cases, this involved rescuing refugees from the shelters destroyed by 26 reported landslides. Over 2,000 people were displaced either because their shelters were badly damaged or as a precautionary measure, and emergency supply were distributed to help rebuild, repair and reinforce damaged shelters. The 2019 Greek legislative election was held on July 7th this year. All 300 seats in the Hellenic Parliament were contested. Preliminary results showed that the New Democracy Party, led by Kyriakos Mitsotakis, won 158 seats, an upright majority that is more than double the party's previous representation. The party took nearly 40% of the popular vote. This year, the first national election in Greece and third election overall since the voting age was lowered to 17. And the number of parliamentary constituencies was increased from 56 to 59. Athens be the largest constituency with 44 seats before the 2018 reform was broken up into smaller constituencies, the largest of which has 18 seats. On the 26th May 2019, following his defeat in the 2019 European parliamentary election in Greece and the current local election, Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras announced that a snap election would be held as soon as possible following the second round of the 2019 municipal elections. If the elimination of Morocco by Benin seems unlikely, those of the reigning African champion and of the host country, moreover, vice champion of Africa, showed an unlikely reality a few months ago. The 24-team African Cup of Nations turned the African round ball elite upside down. From now on, we will have to rely on nations that did not even hope to qualify for an AFCON with 16 teams. A novelty desired by African football leaders to allow the best players on the continent to put themselves forward, but also a trick for Ahmed to put in his pocket minor federations. In addition to the change in the competition calendar that now takes place between June and July, this landmark reform of the president of the African Football Confederation is a strong symbol of a duality of a vision between the latter and his predecessor, Issa Hayatou. The new AFCON configuration, unprecedented in the history of African professional football, has sprouted in the head of Ahmed since his arrival at the Confederation of African Football. From now on, Madagascar, Benin, Burundi, Kenya, and Mauritania are values to rely on for future competitions. The African Continental Free Trade Area has officially been in its operational phase since this weekend. It was one of the strong resolutions of the 12th Extraordinary Summit of the African Union in Niamey, Niger. Outgoing Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras on Monday handed over power to his successor, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, who swept to a landslide victory in Sunday's general elections. The round of 16 of the African Cup of Nations will have been fateful for some of the so-called major countries of continental football. Morocco, Egypt, Cameroon have been knocked out. That's the end of our newscast of the day, but keep watching Gabon 24 for further news.